I want a new American dream, basically. And I don't know exactly what it is yet, but I think that if we, I think that we could build it. I think that we could build it if we try together, because we live in an amazing moment in history right now. And as I bet any sexually vocal person will tell you, the internet has really fundamentally transformed our ability to communicate with one another. Right? For example, just as a brief example, before the internet, if you were, say, a gay teenager in, I don't know, bumfuck nowhere, right, you were the only gay person in the world. Now, though, after the internet, if you're a gay teenager in bumfuck nowhere, you are one of millions of gay teenagers communicating online. So this is big. Like, this is not merely the evolution of telecommunications technologies. This is a revolution. And the internet is such a big deal that it's actually a revolution of all different kinds. Media, governance, technology itself. It's also a second sexual revolution, though. And this one, our generation's sexual revolution, traces its roots through the first. So this is where just a little bit of history comes in really handily. On May 9th, 1960, as you may know, the first oral contraceptive was made available to the general public. It's called the pill. It sparked the sexual revolution of the 1960s and 70s. And like all revolutions, no one could predict the outcome at the outset, right? It sparked chaos. The sexual revolution precipitated the sex wars in the 1980s. Also in the 1960s, in 1962 to be exact, Joseph Karl Robnet Licklider, who was affectionately known by his colleagues as Lick, I'm not kidding about that, first proposed a global network of computers. Right? The project was initially adopted by the Advanced Research Projects Agency, an R&D branch of the US military. As the slogan, "Make love, not war," spread through public consciousness in the free love movement of the 60s, the internet was also, at the same time, it was being recognized as a tool of generic utility. And in 1969 was launched as ARPANET. Make love, not war, then, is, at least poetically, a physical parallel of internet technology. The specification for the Ubiquitous File Transfer Protocol, or FTP, was published in 1973. That's the same year as the Roe v. Wade decision legalized abortion in America. In 1986, as the sex wars continued to rage, the National Science Foundation funded NSFNet as a cross-country 56 kilobits bandwidth internet backbone for expressly non-commercial or academic purposes. The protocol for the World Wide Web, HTTP, was developed by Tim Berners-Lee in 1989, and of course, eventually it became the most widely used protocol on the public internet. So in exactly the same way as Gutenberg's printing press was recognized as a kind of revolution, bringing with it basically 150 years of chaos, so too is the internet. Right? Before the printing press, countries were kingdoms. They weren't countries, they were kingdoms. The invention of the printing press around the year 1440 or so essentially signaled the start of the end of the Western feudal social order, culminating in the Peace of Westphalia in 1648, which brought forth this new political social order to Europe, and with it, of course, the concept of nation-states. What might replace today's countries in 150 years, or even 50 years, if the pace of technology and revolution keeps speeding up? So these histories highlight the intersections of and the tensions between technology, culture, and policy. Right? Moreover, hegemonic preconceptions are especially insidious, as my previous panelists were speaking of, when they make their way into technology. The same-sex marriage debate illustrates this, for example, when clerks in many jurisdictions maintaining matrimony databases try to record a new marriage, right? And then the computer system they're using asks them, which one is the wife? Right? So this unintentional antipathy to the diversity of human identities and relationships, which is literally encoded into society's infrastructure, is perhaps the greatest silent threat to our species' survival. Here's a schema for a marriage database, just as an example, that is completely free of gender and sexuality assumptions. It permits any human to marry any other human any number of times and have any number of partners simultaneously. Now, if you use a schema like this, you'd actually be forced to write tons of application layer logic to enforce the legal restrictions that are placed on marriage today. So our technology actually is beyond the point at which our social constructs of the relationships that we have are existing. The Dalai Lama once said, "Love and compassion are necessities, not luxuries. Without them, humanity cannot survive." But today, as environmentalist and author Paul Hawken observed, goods seem to have become more important and are treated better than people. So faced with the existential threat of this mounting tension, our species will be forced to shoulder the burden that political advisor Jeremy Rifkin imagines that we can in fact accomplish, which is to extend our empathy to the entire human race as an extended family, and to our fellow creatures as part of our evolutionary family, and to the biosphere as our common community, or we perish. Thus, the urgent question is, of course, how do we do that? As it happens, today's polyamory movement, I think, is uniquely situated at an ideological and technological intersection that illuminates a possible answer. Polyamory's key tenet, that a relationship involving more than two individuals is a good and valuable thing, is so powerful because it is so simple. To understand why, we can look to the internet. In his seminal work, New Rules for a New Economy, technology theorist Kevin Kelly wrote, in the network economy, the more plentiful things become, the more valuable they become. Now, from a polyamorous perspective, one could say love is not a scarce commodity, right? Or even more generally, perhaps, the more, the merrier. As I see it, a polyactivist's core goal can be succinctly described as achieving equality in relationship choice. That is, polyamorous people recognize that the structure of a monogamous relationship, in which one individual is connected to only one other individual, is limiting. Instead, we argue, many people may find more value by changing the structure such that one individual can be connected to more than one other individual at the same time. This has some remarkable parallels to the way that telecommunication technologies like the internet work. In essence, polyamory does for relationships what digital telecommunication technologies did for ideas. Here's how web designer John Waters put it. In the industrial economy, I know this is a big slide, only with lots of text, I promise. In the industrial economy, scarcity established value. Natural resources such as oil, gold, and diamonds were scarce and therefore considered valuable. Paul Romer and other theorists introduced something called the New Growth Theory. In this model, the principle of scarcity is turned upside down. The new theory essentially divides the world into two productive inputs, things and ideas. Only one person at a time can use things, such as a hammer, telephone, lawnmower, etc. On the other hand, ideas can be used by many people simultaneously, recipes, blueprints, so on. They can be used to rearrange things. They can be copied, shared, connected, and thereby leading to more ideas. Economic growth, Romer says, arises from the discovery of new recipes and the transformation of things from low to high value configurations. So this transformation of things from low to high value configurations is what the polyamory movement does with regards to relationships. The most obvious limitation with the often monogamous notion of true love is that it creates a scarcity model, and free distribution is anathema to maintaining scarcity. Polyamorous people understand that free love is not just a hippie slogan, it is a way to create real-world emotional value. And it is now our words in the form of programming languages that are driving the evolution of technology. The corpus of this technological literature changed our physical reality, offering us everything from hormone therapies to space shuttles to online social networks, right? Meanwhile, those same social networks offer fertile soil where non-mainstream perspectives can take root. As Wired columnist Regina Lynn wrote, beyond the obvious benefits for online community, in the language's internet speed evolution continues to give polyamory a boost. When poly or polycurious people stumble across the polyamorous lexicon, the discovery can help validate their worldview. The introduction of new language and terms, both terms and techniques for communication itself, is a profound change. In the words of asexuality activist David J., by finding new ways to talk about relationships, we can greatly increase our options for forming them. In addition to the value offered by transforming the topology of relationships, there is also value in having a diversity of relationship types. Even healthy monogamous people have strong friendship, coworker, familial, and other kinds of social networks that look similar to polyamorous people's more intimate networks. Look at it this way. In the early 19th century, American railways were a transportation infrastructure for commerce, right? A network of matter-moving devices. In the early 1990s, the World Wide Web emerged as a general-purpose infrastructure for communications, essentially a network of idea-moving devices. Today, polyamorous and non-monogamous culture is a peer-to-peer infrastructure for the transmission of information about human relationships. It's a literal social network of compassion-moving devices. So this marriage of polyamorous culture with the internet thereby accelerates the distribution of the Dalai Lama's prophylactic prescription for humanity. Or in much more simpler words, the success or failure of that quintessential American dream, right, your pursuit of happiness, is at least in part intertwined with others' similar pursuits. As Harvard professor Nicholas Christakis observed, if I were always violent towards you, or gave you misinformation, or made you sad, or infected you with deadly germs, you would cut the ties to me, and the network would disintegrate. So the spread of good and valuable things is required to sustain and nourish social networks. Similarly, social networks are required for the spread of good and valuable things, like love, and kindness, and happiness, and altruism, and ideas. I think, in fact, that if we realized how valuable social networks are, we'd spend a lot more time nourishing them and sustaining them, because I think social networks are fundamentally related to goodness. And what I think the world needs now is more connections. Now, in the latter 20th century, the American dream grew up in a house with a white picket fence and porch and had a college education and got a steady job. But today, the American dream has increasingly been seen as a platitude unveiling corporate greed. Founding director of Xavier University's Center for the Study of the American Dream, Michael Ford, sums it up like this. To an astonishing degree, Americans have lost confidence in the institutions traditionally seen as dream guardians. Americans feel they're on their own, but they haven't lost the dream. They have confidence in themselves, their families, and their personal networks. So perhaps adopting the polyamorous tenet that goodness is inherent in social connectedness is therefore not merely a social ideal, but also a blueprint for a 21st century of a reimagined and reinvigorated American dream. And where better to present such an idea, such as here in America's capital at American University. Thank you very much.